Now here's a big one for me, Mortal Kombat 2. This may just be the first fighting game I ever played. It was one of the games that came with that Super Nintendo I got for my 5th birthday. I still remember the first time I ever saw it, coming downstairs to see my dad as Liu Kang getting his ass kicked by Baraka. After the Mario games, this was one of my most played games back then. This is going to be a long one, I have a lot to say and 5 versions of this game to cover. As for the plot, well, we kind of have to go over what happened at the end of the first game, so let's flash back to that from episode 4, to a 2.5 year younger, more awkward sounding Ultra Kintaro. Not knowing he's a week or two out from just over a year and a half of things going to shit in his personal life. Not many details of what happened during the tournament bracket. We know Sonya lost, most likely to Kano, and thus her team was executed and their souls eaten by Shang. Liu Kang emerges the victor but has to fight Goro. Liu wins and breaks Outworld's streak, but he's not done yet. He is here to oust Shang. Shang isn't having it though. He has his island start to crumble into the sea and tries to escape while setting his army of masked guards on the survivors. During this, an angry and dazed Goro emerges and starts a fight with Sonya, Kano and Johnny. While Raiden, Sub-Zero and Scorpion fight the masked guards at the palace gates, Scorpion makes his way to Sub-Zero and while Raiden watches, burns him to death. See, Sub-Zero survived the tournament but died immediately after. Going against his claim of not being a murderer doesn't leave Scorpion feeling at peace, and he disappears into ash. Liu chases Shang to the Warrior Shrine and puts the championship on the line to challenge him. Liu defeats him with a flying kick but doesn't kill him, allowing Shang to escape while Liu leaves. Goro and the others have fought their way into the pit, which crumbles underneath them. Goro, Kano and Sonya fall in as the island explodes, but Raiden manages to save Johnny just in time and drops him off at sea. To be continued. Well, after that, Shang Tsung returned to Outworld where his loss of a tournament isn't taken well by the Emperor, Shao Kahn. That's twice Shang has cost him the tournament on that 10th win he needs to invade. To save himself, Shang comes up with the idea of challenging the Earthrealmers to a new tournament, a final winner-takes-all with Kahn himself as the final challenge, where if Outworld win, they can bypass the 10 tournament rule and invade. And to make sure the Earthrealmers agree to this rigged game, they launch multiple attacks on places in Earthrealm, provoking them into agreeing to the tournament. And so they have to journey through Outworld to the tournament, and also save Sonya Blade and Kano, who wound up there after the first tournament and were captured. Of course, as we find out in the next game, that's not all. There's even more going on behind the scenes. As far as gameplay goes, it's pretty much the same stuff as the first game. 2 punch buttons, 2 kick buttons, a block button, uppercut, roundhouse, sweep. So we can move right on past that and go to the characters. I'll start with the Earthrealmers and with our main character once again, Liu Kang. After winning the first tournament and returning control of it from Shang Tsung to the Shaolin, he returns to the temple where he was raised to find it ruined and the White Lotus Society massacred with only a single survivor. When given the challenge of the second tournament, Liu abandons his Shaolin principles in favour of seeking revenge. He retains his flying kick with forward high kick and the fireball with forward high punch, though now the fireballs take the shape of dragon heads and he can now throw them while in the air. He gains a crouching fireball with forward low punch, and his best special move, the bicycle kick, by holding low kick for 3 seconds and releasing. This time we have more finishers than just the one fatality. Holding block and doing a circle going forward, up, back, down will make Liu do his somersault kick from the first game, but now the screen goes dark. Up close, down, forward, back high kick will have him transform into a dragon and bite the opponent in half. This is my favourite fatality for Liu, but this is not my favourite version of it. I'll have more to say in a bit. But we also have the new joke finisher, Friendships. By pressing forward, back, low kick, a disco ball will lower and Liu will dance. I love the kind of friendships that are just ridiculously out of character. Another new finisher, the Babality. Liu's is down, forward, back, low kick. As a kid, Liu was the only character I could play any decently as, thanks to how simple his moves are. He's a lot of fun. Just a simple forward jump kick followed by a flying or bicycle kick before they can land is so fun. He was my main for many years until I got better with another character, but even after that, he's still number 2 in terms of fun for me. I really like Liu's story in this game, and it's such a shame that, as far as I know, he has never appeared again, in the reboot or in any adaptation. Not the revenge thing, that's always been there, but the part about having to abandon his principles, which includes having to wrestle with the idea of killing people. He only entered the first tournament to prevent an invasion and also remove Shang Tsung from having any power over the tournament. He didn't kill Shang because even if he was no longer a monk by the first game, he was still raised by them with their teachings. He had a non-fatal fatality because he didn't kill. And what does saving the world and sticking with his beliefs get him? Immortality that forces him to fight in all future tournaments until he's killed in battle, and the guy he spared coming back with an army of monsters and killing almost everyone he knows. As far as he knows, this is going to be his entire life from now on. Later stories ignore this step and start him off as this sneering arsehole who's always been fine with killing people he doesn't like. That moment in MK9 where Johnny Cage doesn't kill Baraka and Lou looks disgusted at him really says a lot about how much the writer gave a shit. One of the worst parts of the worst MK story. But yeah, of course this means that Lou will now do proper fatalities, but not exactly. He still has the somersault kick, but now the screen goes dark, as if he's a little more brutal. Then his actual gory fatality with the dragon is interesting because we don't see the real Lou performing the violence. So in the game where Liu Kang has to abandon his beliefs and accept he may have to kill, his two fatalities are just a slightly more brutal but not explicitly fatal one, and one where we don't see him cause the violence as himself. That's more subtle and compelling storytelling from just the finishers of 2 consecutive games than an entire cinematic multi-hour story mode with cutscenes and acting. That's taking advantage of the little space you have to tell as much story as you can. There's a little more with Lou, but it relates to other characters, so I'll talk about those bits with them. Lastly, we have his new costume. The first one was fine as an Enter the Dragon tribute, but we're not doing Enter the Dragon anymore, so staying with that look wouldn't really work. The general idea of this look will stay with Lou throughout just about the entire series from now. Red headband, red stripe down the trousers, studded wristbands. It's a big improvement over the original look, but it's hard to choose which version of this design is my favourite, they all have their subtle differences. Next up we have a new character, Kung Lao, the last descendant of the great Kung Lao who defeated Shang Tsung over 500 years ago. He was raised as part of the White Lotus Society, but like Liu Kang, he left the Order before the events of the first game. He returned to the temple where he became the only survivor of the massacre. Reuniting with Liu Kang, Kung Lao joins him in his quest for revenge. As for his moves, he can throw his razor hat with back, forward, low punch. The angle the hat moves can also be controlled with up and down. He has a dive kick when pressing down and high kick in the air, a teleport jump with down and up. Then there's the whirlwind spin by holding block, pressing up, up and low kick. I find this a nightmare to use and it rarely works for me. As for fatalities, from sweep distance, pressing forward, forward, forward and low kick will have him slice the opponent in half vertically with his hat. This is the goriest fatality in the game, and when I was younger it actually disturbed me a little. I think the fact that these are digitised actors helped. For a supposed pacifist, this guy gets the most brutal finishers, but I'll get to that in a bit. His second fatality is a nightmare. Hold low punch, then back, forward and release low punch. The screen goes black but he just did the normal move. Well, you have to steer the hat and aim it perfectly at the neck to cut the head off. I hate this one. It's so precise and way too much effort for just a simple decapitation. His friendship is back, 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 down, high kick. He'll pull a rabbit out of his hat with a cheesy grin on his face. I like this one. The sillier friendships are the best ones. His ability is forward, 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 high punch. I've always struggled with Kung Lao in earlier games. In both this and MK3, I've seen some insane stuff people pull off using the spin of a dive kick that I just can't do. Mainly because that spin is a pain to pull off for me. I do like Kung Lao, he's got a cool look to him and a memorable moveset, but he's one of those that I tend to like less and less as the series goes on. I like that he isn't the main character and doesn't get a free pass to that spot just for being related to an in-universe famous person. He works really well as Liu Kang's new psychic in this game, but an issue is he kind of is the most disposable character in this game's playable cast, which is why I imagine it took around 20 years for him to appear in a non-screen adaptation. So I know they got the constant demand in the mid to late 2000s to have him take over as main character permanently, or the idea that he's always been more interesting than Liu, because I don't see it. His one turn as main character ended up a red herring, and to be honest, I think that's for the best. People always clung onto this pacifism angle which doesn't even apply to this game. He won't become a pacifist for another 2 games. The main reason I like him less these days is due to writing and overuse. In a series like Mortal Kombat that spent so long having a fluid roster, it's a pain seeing him showing up so often recently when he doesn't need to be there. MKX is one that could have had him in the background, but he himself wasn't too bad. But MK11 is his most recent game and I honestly hate him in it, unlikable, arrogant dickhead. I cannot imagine MK2 Kung Lao calling himself even greater than the ancestor he respects so much. I know Shaolin Monk started that, but MK11 didn't have to look at that and go, what if we made this more unbearable? Nowadays he just feels like a guy coasting his way into every game because he was cool nearly 30 years ago. Kinda sad. Maybe if he wasn't in MK11, I'd be more positive right now. His costume in this game is simple, but it's one of my favourites for him. Probably second favourite. Kung Lao kind of gets a lot of really bland or shitty outfits as the series went on, but the colour scheme and shape of this one, along with the Big Wu character, always made me like this one. Next we'll go back to a returning character, Johnny Cage. After Shang Tsung's island collapsed and Raiden left him floating out at sea, Johnny was found by the US Special Forces and questioned by Sonya's superior about her whereabouts. When his stories of the Magic Tournament with 4-armed dragon men don't convince anyone, he gets let go. While on the set of his next film, he gets attacked by Shang Tsung and other warriors working for Shao Kahn as part of the plan to provoke the Earthrealms into accepting the tournament. And so when he gets backed up by Liu Kang and the others, he goes with them to Outworld, hoping he'd pick up some ideas for his newest film on the way. He retains his Shadow Kick with back forward low kick and Ball Breaker with low punch and block. His green ball from the first game has been replaced with the Shadow Ball, which moves in an arc and has two heights. A high one with forward down back and high punch, and a low one with back down forward low punch. Finally there's his Shadow Uppercut with back down back high punch. Another side note is that his close kick, instead of just being a knee, is an axe kick that launches. For finishers, forward forward down up has him do his decapitating uppercut from the first game. His second fatality with down down forward forward low punch has him tear the opponent's torso off and throw it on the ground. It's a decent one, but I've gotta say, I've always found the throwing sprite amusing. It looks like a toddler throwing a tantrum. His friendship is down 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 high kick. He'll sign an autograph to his best fan. It's a classic. I like it, and it got an amazing callback in MK9. His babality is back 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 high kick. So story wise, Johnny in this game is whatever. He's just around, one of the good guy henchmen with nothing interesting to do. This would be part of the reason I found Johnny so boring in the games for years. He's the opposite of Kung Lao, a character I never cared for until the reboot made him a favourite. It's still wild to me that they rebooted and ruined so many characters for me, but Johnny Cage was the one who came out on top. He gets a slight redesign, trousers instead of shorts, and blue now becomes his colour instead of red. It's fine, nowhere near my favourite Cage outfit though. Keeping the sunglasses to just his wind pose robs his appearance and gameplay of a lot of character. Next is another new character, Jackson Briggs. Jax is the leader of the Special Forces unit Sonya was in, and the strongest man in the world. When she goes missing after heading off to the tournament, he finds Johnny and questions him, but finds it hard to believe and lets him go. Soon after, he gets a distress call from Sonya and Kano, proving Johnny's claims correct. Heading to Johnny's film set to question him some more, he gets caught up in Outworld's attack on him. He ends up in a fight with their biggest monster, but the fight ends once the tournament challenge is accepted. So he also heads into Outworld with the main goal of saving Sonya. As for moves, he has his energy wave with forward down back high punch, the ground pound by holding low kick for 3 seconds and releasing, the gotcha grab is a good one, forward forward low punch and continue tapping low punch for extra hits past the first 2. Then there's his back breaker by pressing block in the air next to the opponent. Finally he has a special throw. By continuing to mash high punch in a throw, Jax will do the quad slam, slamming up to 4 times. For fatalities, holding low punch, pressing forward 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 and releasing will have Jax clap the opponent's head into chunks. A nice quick one, perfect for showing the physical strength of the world's strongest man. Then from sweep distance, pressing block 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 and low punch will have him tear their arms off and leave them standing there bleeding to death. Another good show of strength. These two are perfectly good on their own, but MK9 will combine these in the dumbest possible way. For his friendship, holding block and pressing down down up up low kick will have him make some paper dolls. Not the most interesting, but what makes me adore this one is the giant smile he has. This is the happiest anyone has ever been in any Mortal Kombat media. His babality is done by holding block and pressing down up and low kick. I've said many times before that I'm not a competitive fighting game player, but once I got Jax's moves down, I could definitely see why he's considered top of the tier list. He's very good. The gotcha grab does so much damage when you get all the punches in, and you can follow a jump kick with the back breaker if you time it right. Not one of my mains, but a lot of fun. As for Jax himself, he's my favourite of the pure Special Forces characters. He keeps from being boring like Sonya by simply having more charisma. Or any charisma at all really. The Special Forces as an organisation are still boring though, until they get some more diverse additions in the 3D era, which is the only time they were ever any interesting. I actually quite like in this franchise that started off as Asian martial arts films and mysticism filtered through a western comic, Jax in this game is an army dude, but there's no technology in his moveset. He's the strongest man in the world not just in terms of physique and physical strength, he also has control over chi like Liu Kang and Johnny Cage. He can throw his in the forms of energy waves, his ground punch has his fist glow from using his chi. I feel that this is an important part of his character that shows why he fits in with the other Earthrealm warriors so well, and it's a shame that nowadays that aspect has been removed to get to the metal arms as quick as possible. I like the metal arms, but I've hated the way the franchise has treated them since MK9 made them full replacements for lost organic arms instead of the metal gloves they used to be. Aside from robbing Jax of his agency and cutting a part of his character from this game and MK3, it's now led to Jax's role in every new continuity to be, who's gonna get the gore destruction of Jax's arms this time? It also makes the world's strongest man look kind of pathetic before he gets the bionic arms, as if they're carrying him and not the fact that they exist to make a strong guy even stronger. But that's enough of that. Speaking of the world's strongest man aspect, The best way of showing this was that the 4-armed sub-boss, successor to Goro, does not have a rivalry with the main character, but with Jax. That's a good way to build Jax up, and the way it turns out is also an important part of Jax's story that affects the rest of his time in the series. However, I will say that Jax is a character that has his low points in terms of portrayals. The quality of said portrayals and their timing is weird. When most characters are doing well and are at their most interesting, Jax is suffering and reduced to a stereotypical angry black man. But then we get the reboot where 95% of the cast is written like shit, and Jax's characterization is fixed, and is one of the characters who comes out fine. It's weird. Be nice to have a game again where Jax and most of the rest of the cast is portrayed correctly. As for his costume, it's fine. I prefer red on his outfits more than the purple he'll later get, and it's clear he's only really shirtless to show off John Parrish's physique. He'll get better costumes, but he'll also get much worse than this. I will say that I would love to see a game include the yellow gi Jax was originally going to wear. Considering he has chi powers, it wouldn't be too out of place, and I think it would look good on him. Now for another returning character, we have Raiden. Raiden watches the attack on Earthrealm from the heavens, and once the tournament challenge is accepted, he leads the Earthrealm warriors to the portals into Outworld. From there he takes his mortal form once again and travels further into Outworld alone. Raiden has mostly the same moveset as he did in the first game, with just one new move. His lightning is down forward low punch, his teleport is down up, and his torpedo is back forward and can now be done in the air. The gibberish returns, and the MK2 Raiden gibberish is at its peak here. His new move is the electric grab, done by holding high punch for 5 seconds and letting go. Not that useful to be honest. You're never gonna get it off against the monster that is this game's AI anyway. For finishers, holding low kick for 6 seconds and continuing to mash after releasing will have Raiden do an electric grab that ends with the opponent exploding. It's fine and makes sense. It's better than the MK1 head explosion, but still doesn't touch the Super Nintendo censored one, where he reduces them to dust with a skull on top. Holding high punch for 8 seconds will have him do an uppercut that obliterates the opponent's body, leaving just the head to drop down from the sky seconds later. I like this one. The uppercut has always been the most powerful looking and sounding move in the game, so it makes sense for God to get an even more powerful version to show that even with a mortal body, he's very powerful. Way more effective than the bland overdone gore fest he's had in recent years. For his friendship, down back forward high kick has him summon Kid Thunder, a child Raiden. This joke finisher has had me fascinated for years. Who and what is Kid Thunder? Is he just a thing Raiden can create? Is he a fan? A cosplayer? Is he Raiden's actual biological child? I mean, John Tobias' old MK Mythologies website did say that Raiden was every god of thunder in every mythology, with whatever parts that don't gel with Raiden being simple misunderstandings from those who passed on those legends. That means Raiden is also Zeus, so Raiden having many children isn't too out there. Maybe we can write off the horrible writing of Raiden from the last decade by claiming NRS Raiden is an adult Kid Thunder. Or am I just taking a joke and overthinking it? Yes, that's the answer. His babality is done by holding block and pressing down down up high kick. This is the game where Raiden is solidified as the mentor of the heroes. The godly arrogance is gone and there's no joke endings about blowing up the world. This is where he starts to get the characterization of Raiden being different from the gods as being the god who cares about mortal lives and is willing to put their safety above the rules of the Elder Gods, which comes to a head in Trilogy. It's so sad to me seeing Raiden as this dull stickler for the rules who has to ask the Elder Gods permission for his every thought and action, considering he was always portrayed as a massive rule breaker before then. As happy as I am to finally see Fujin get the attention and respect he always deserved in MK11 Aftermath, and believe me, I was very happy with that. It is kind of bittersweet, because this characterization of MK11 Fujin that everyone loves is what Raiden used to be back in this game. Like, here Raiden goes off alone to do some fighting himself before the others can even reach the tournament. There are many ways you can look at this, but I see it as him wanting to keep them from having to risk their lives because he's the god that cares. It's such a disconnect from the dull arsehole in MK9 willingly putting other people's lives at risk and refusing to help people he got in trouble. Say what you will about Battle for the Realms from last year, but that was the closest we've had to classic Raiden in years. But now his outfit, it's a big improvement over the original, and all they did was slap a blue apron on him and add some logos to his arms. It's simple, but it's one of my favourite looks for him. They even use him for the arcade side art and it's one of my favourite Raiden images. That's why I went with the side art for my thumbnails instead of arcade flyers like I've done with other arcade games. That's the main group of Earthrealm fighters, but there's still more. Next we have Sub-Zero. Last we saw, Sub-Zero survived the first tournament for about 10 minutes before Scorpion killed him, reduced to a charred skeleton too. And yet here he is venturing into Outworld to fulfill that failed assassination on Shang Tsung he was hired for by entering the tournament to get close to him. Of course now we all know what's going on, but I'll save it for the endings. His freeze ball returns with down forward low punch along with his slide by pressing back, block, low punch and low kick at once. His one new move is the ground freeze with down, back and low kick, creating an icy puddle for the opponent to slip on. His first fatality is done in 2 steps. First, forward, forward, down and high kick from sweep distance will have him deep freeze the opponent. Then forward, down, forward, forward, high punch up close will have him uppercut the torso and destroy it. It's a more violent upgrade of the censored MK1 Super Nintendo fatality. It makes sense and it's the only fatality with extra steps that I enjoy pulling off. Then there is other fatality, on the other side of the screen, holding low punch, pressing back, back, down and forward, then letting go will have him create an ice grenade that he throws into the opponent to explode their upper body. It looks cool, but I don't really get it. His friendship is back, back, down, high kick, which makes him advertise his own Sub-Zero doll. It's a cute one, but it bugs me that all 3 of the male palette swap ninjas share the same friendship, when our other pair of palette swaps each got their own. His babality is down, back, back, high kick. Of the 3 male ninjas in this game, I find Sub-Zero the most fun. The slide is a good follow-up to any knockdown, and unlike the other slide user, he has a stunning projectile that isn't arse. It's tough to talk about Sub-Zero in this game without going into his ending, but I will say that this is the start of the most developed character in the MK series. I'm also glad that it isn't just a "this guy's back from the dead now", there's an actual mystery to what's going on. When was the last time the series has done that with a character last seen dead but turns up alive? We also got an updated ninja costume, and I like it quite a bit. The mask is more distinct than just a piece of cloth, we've got the taller shin guards, and then there's a diamond shaped quilted pattern. Now this was in the first game's ninja costume, but the sprites were so compressed that it's difficult to make out, but here we can see it clearer. I think the only part I prefer from MK1 is the shade of blue, but that's it. But there's still one more fighter from Earthrealm in this tournament. Last time, Scorpion killed Sub-Zero just after the tournament as retaliation for killing him. However, this did not give him the piece he was hoping for and he ends up returning to Hell. Soon after, he learns of Sub-Zero's reappearance, having no idea what's even going on. But he figures that the reason he doesn't have his piece is because Sub-Zero is still alive, or has been resurrected, so he still hasn't avenged himself. So he leaves Hell and goes to Outworld to enter the tournament and complete his mission properly. His spear returns with back back low punch, as does his teleport punch with down back high punch. His new special is the leg takedown with forward down forward low kick, a move I always forget about and almost never works on the AI. Finally, he can throw the opponent while in the air by pressing block next to them. A new fatality of his is done by holding high punch up close and pressing down forward 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 and letting go. He'll use his spear to cut the opponent's throat and then cut them in half from the waist. I really like this one. It's the most no-nonsense ninja fatality there is, and it's nice to have the fatality using the spear that doesn't go on for an eternity. Quick and to the point. And of course, holding block and pressing up, up and high punch will have him do the classic Toasty fatality. Only this time it has a visual upgrade, showing the skeleton on fire and exploding. A nice improvement. Back back down high kick is his friendship, the same doll friendship Sub-Zero has. His babality is down back back high kick. Maybe it's because the AI can counter everything I try as him, but Scorpion just doesn't do it for me in this game, gameplay wise. When it comes to story, like Sub-Zero, I can't really say much until the endings. But I can say that this game sets Scorpion on an interesting story path for the next few games that's separate from just being a dull angry boy as he's been commonly portrayed as. The new sprites I feel work best with Scorpion's colour scheme. He looks much better than he did in the first game. This game is also the first one to include his blank white eyes, seen in his character select icon, win pose, bio image and endings. But not all sprites, so he can share them with the other two. They're a big part of Scorpion's character, but I do think that as the series goes on, it overuses this design choice with future characters and gets a bit boring. Like, why does Hotaru have blank white eyes? He's just a guy, and Dairu is from the same place and doesn't have them. That's the Earthrealmers. The remaining 5 playable characters are on the Outworld side. Let's start with the one on the absolute bottom of Outworld's hierarchy and the third of the ninjas. It's Reptile, being promoted from unplayable hidden fight using the other ninjas' moves to an actual playable character with his own moveset. Reptile has been appointed Shang Tsung's bodyguard by Shao Kahn, which is why he was hidden in the first game. He wasn't part of the tournament bracket, he was hiding behind the scenes to keep Shang Tsung alive. His race is thought to have gone extinct millions of years ago, with his ninja claws and human skin a disguise so that he can blend in with other ninjas at the tournament. For moves, he shares Sub-Zero's slide with back, low punch, low kick and block together, but for new moves he has his acid spit with forward forward high punch. There's his force ball with forward forward and both punches together, a projectile that launches the opponent into the air, if you can even make it land. Finally, he can turn invisible by holding block and pressing up, up, down, high punch. For fatalities, when invisible you can press forward forward down high kick for the opponent's upper body to be ripped right off, allowing your imagination to run wild with what Reptile actually did to them. At a half-screen distance, back down low punch will have Reptile pull his mask off to reveal his true face. He lets loose his long tongue, pulls the opponent's head off and swallows it. This one disturbed me as a kid. I didn't know as a kid these were digitised actors, but I did know the characters looked like real people, so seeing someone swallow a human head whole was a shocking sight at 5 years old. Then the fact he rubs his belly and goes just to rub it in really added to it. My favourite version of this fatality. Back down low kick is the same doll friendship as the other ninjas, and down forward block is his babality. I've said before that I got MK1 and MK2 for the same birthday as a kid, so I never got to have that moment of holy shit, you can actually play as Reptile this time, because I always had access to Reptile and I played this game more than MK1. But I can imagine the thrill of having this previously unusable character finally become playable. I know the feeling from later games, and even games from other franchises, like finally being able to play as the likes of Ganondorf and Ridley for the first time in their first Smash games, or things like previously unplayable bosses becoming normal characters in sequels. That said, it's a shame then that Reptile is kind of garbage in this game, considered rock bottom on the tier lists. He's got the slide, but that's about it. The acid spit is whatever, but that force ball is worthless. Not only is the attack itself slow, but it actually takes an eternity to actually come out. Chances are you're knocked on your ass before you can pull off any successful force ball. He's certainly one of the characters I had the hardest time beating the game with. I like Reptile. There is kind of an underdog aspect to him, since his role is to be the worst treated bottom rung henchman with a miserable life. And of course revelations from his endings will add to that. I will say he's not a character that needs to be in every game. I know people are mad he isn't in MK11, along with every other missing palette swap because they always tend to get the free passes, but I'm fine with it. Not every game's plot needs to fit him in, and that's fine. I think Reptile is one of the few characters who has been in just the right amount of games. Not underused to the point that him not appearing is a failing of the franchise like certain post-MK3 characters, and not overused to the point where I'm sick of them like Sonya, Kano and Kung Lao. Or at the point where I don't want them to appear because I dread how they're going to ruin them further like Goro, Sindel or Ermac. Thing is, I do think people look at Reptile's victimhood and kind of whitewash his actions a bit too much. Yes, he has a sad backstory and he's treated badly and his life is miserable, but he also enjoys what he does. He likes to murder people and eat their heads. I get the want for a Reptile redemption story, but that aspect has to be addressed first. People want to skip that step and go right to his happy ending, but we haven't had the game to kickstart that part of his story yet. Besides, knowing this franchise they'd only walk back on it the next game and make him an even bigger monster anyway. I'll expand on that part in a bit. Going up the Outworld hierarchy we have new character Baraka. Baraka is the leader of the Tarkatan race. Yes, I know the name Tarkatan wouldn't be revealed until Deception, but it's not really important. The Tarkatans were the horde that slaughtered Liu Kang's Shaolin temples. While there are many species in Outworld that are allied with Shao Kahn, the Tarkatans are his main force, acting as the grunts. They are essentially lower class citizens living in the wastelands, below the likes of Ashokan but still above Reptile. Baraka is the leader simply by being their best fighter, which is why he is appointed to enter the tournament for Outworld by Shao Kahn. He has a simple swipe with the blades in his arms by pressing back and high punch. There's his blade spark with down back high punch. His useful anti-air blade fury with back low punch. Finally he has a unique 2-hit kick up close. For fatalities, back forward down forward low punch will have Baraka impale the opponents on his blades while lifting them in the air. It's simple but done well, especially the twitching they continue to do after the initial impalement and the slide down. Back high punch will have him decapitate the opponent with his blade. It's fine, a little generic but it makes sense. His friendship is holding block and pressing up, forward and high kick to have him gift the opponent a wrapped present. This was the first friendship I ever saw and I like it. It's basic but his big goofy grin makes it work. His ability is forward, high kick. Baraka's pretty fun in this game. I've always found the blade spark useful, the blade swipe is simple but satisfying to hit with, and the blade fury is always a blast to trap the arsehole AI in. As a kid, I liked Baraka. He had a unique look to him and the arm blades made him stand out. However, I said last episode that Sonya and Kano were in a trio of boring bastards who get a free pass into nearly every game despite being too boring to justify it. And yeah, Baraka is the third member of that trio for me. He's been a bland henchman in so many games with no personality that I just got sick of seeing him. Having him be one of the very limited amount of characters in MK vs DCU was the tipping point for me. While people were celebrating him being one of the first revealed characters for MK11, I was just thinking, for fuck's sake, we just got rid of him. Getting all 3 of the boring bastards revealed to be in the game so soon together was the first bit of anti-hype I had for that game. The other was having MKX hint at a crossover between the old timeline and reboot timeline, only to have it turn out to be a crossover between the reboot timeline and also the reboot timeline. It would be like if in Spider-Man No Way Home, the hyped up crossover of 3 Spider-Men turned out to be just bringing in Tom Holland from Homecoming and Tom Holland from Far From Home. But anyway, the other issue I have is that the series also has had so many cooler monster type characters since that never get a look in because they always default back to this character. I was very frustrated with those demanding Baraka's return as DLC in MKX as if they were robbed. Like, motherfuckers, you get to have your character in nearly every game, maybe let a character who never gets a chance have a turn. And yet, ironically enough, in the end, I would have taken Baraka over 6 of the 8 DLC characters in that game. Only Tanya and Boraicho were good choices to me. But I will say, MK11 did finally add some depth to Baraka and make him an interesting character. But I still have 2 issues with that. First is that it was Baraka's 8th appearance. Why is Baraka allowed 8 chances to become a good character when others like Dramin, who were interesting on day 1, are refused another chance and just kept in the background for shitty haha 3D character jabs? The second issue is that, yeah, it's a great redemption story and adds a lot of depth and personality to Baraka, but it's not gonna stick. Even ignoring the way MK11 ended, one thing I've learned from this franchise is that it will create these great redemption stories, reveal that these people who look evil and scary all have more going on than it looks. Cabal, Sindel, Goro, Ermac, and then it just pisses them all away. I will be very surprised if any of Baraka's MK11 depth sticks around. I'm almost certain next game he appears in will revert him to a bland, grunting henchman. Complaining aside, his costume. This game is still my favourite look for Baraka. I actually feel he looks creepier being lean as opposed to just being another buff guy like he is in everything else. He's also got those sunken in eyes where you can't see anything, just black holes. But this also extends to the way he moves, the way he holds his arms up like that when he walks. A lot of those aspects have since been lost in favour of just making him more generically brutish, but moving on. Next we have Kitana. Along with her twin sister Mileena, she's one of Shao Kahn's personal assassins. Not just that, but she's also his daughter. Her role is to add to Outworld's numbers in the tournament and kill any Earthrealmers she faces. However, between fights she is seen meeting up with and talking to an Earthrealm fighter, most likely Liu Kang. All of this earns her Mileena's suspicions, but only Kitana knows what her true plans are. Like Baraka, Kitana has a weapon swipe move with back and high punch using her steel fan. She can throw a fan with forward and both punches together. There's her fan lift with back high punch, an amazing move to set up the combos. Then she also has Sonya's square wave punch with forward down back high punch. It suits her much better than Sonya. Her first fatality, from holding low kick, pressing forward down and releasing, is the Kiss of Death. Kitana will pull down the mask, kiss the opponent on the cheek, and they will inflate and explode. It's a cool one, but it is one of those ones that brings up a lot of questions. Is it a thing she has to decide on, or do all her kisses make a person explode? Is Lu in for an unfortunate end if their future relationship progresses? Would tucking her kids into bed and kissing them goodnight blow them the fuck up? Probably not, but you never know. Her second fatality is block high kick to make her decapitate the opponent with a fan. Basic, but makes sense. Her friendship is done by holding block and pressing down up low kick. She'll make you a cake. Like the Baraka one, it's silly and out of character in the same way, so I like it. Her babality is down low kick. Kitana for me is the most fun character in the game. First one I ever completed a full playthrough as. I love jump kicks followed by throwing fans. I love doing that after getting them stuck in the fan lift, or even trapping them in the corner and you can follow up the jump kick and fan throw with an uppercut. So good, I wish I picked her up as a kid. Maybe then it wouldn't have taken me until I was about 12 or 13 to beat the game. Kitana really is the star of the newcomers. She has the most interesting story with her working against Shao Kahn right under his nose trying to bring about his downfall. Plus the fact that she's been doing this for hundreds if not thousands of years really makes her the most deserving character for a prequel spin-off. I don't get why John Tobias was considering a Baraka game but not a Kitana game, because her 10,000 years of life being a daughter to Shao Kahn, learning the truth about him and who she is, and secretly working against him has so much potential. She's a character that's only going to get more interesting as the games go on. But of course, like a lot of characters, time wasn't kind to her. Shaolin Monks was the first big misstep, but that game is easily written off as non-canon. But the reboot is going to damage Kitana a lot, before MK11 does some fixing, to which Aftermath then goes and undoes again. The important keys to Kitana's character in this game are that she started off as a willing assassin for Shao Kahn. She discovers the truth about Shao Kahn by herself and chooses to act against him. Her and Mileena did have an actual sisterly relationship at one point, and another important one when it comes to Shao Kahn is that Shao Kahn actually loves her as a daughter in his own disturbed, fucked up way and has her as the favourite daughter. And the current franchise since 2005 has done its hardest to undo every bit of that. Either she's magically brainwashed, has to have Raiden make her find out the truth, never had a relationship with Mileena because she was now born during the events of this game, and Shao Kahn always hated her, never wanted her and always preferred Mileena. Every single change here was a downgrade that damaged Kitana, Shao Kahn and Mileena and drained away their depth. And that's the thing, MK11 may have fixed her characterization and treated her better, but that version of her is still saddled with her shitty reboot foundation. But let's get to the other thing, her romance with Liu Kang. I am glad to see that people are coming around to this again, because if you were around taking part in or lurking in fandom in the mid to late 2000s, then you may remember that this wasn't popular at all in that time. There were a lot of male Kitana fans who had an unhealthy hatred of Liu Kang, acting as if her romance with him was holding her back, yet at the same time hyping up the possibility of the romance with a version of Rain that they were imagining as a self-idealised version of themselves. I remember those types. Their main argument was that there was no romance intended and it's something casual fans pushed for because it was in the film, and that's simply not true. Kitana was always intended to have the romantic subplot with Liu Kang, ever since she was intended to be in the first game as Proto Shang Tsung's daughter. You don't see much of those guys anymore, I guess they got over their obsession. As for why it would even happen, I believe it makes sense. Kitana is secretly meeting up with him to leak out world secrets and help bring down Shao Kahn. Seeing someone being so fearless and open in standing against him after several thousand years of people living in fear of him will be something new that draws her to him. As for Liu Kang, there's an additional thing that may make a relationship with her appealing. Remember, Kitana is over 10,000 years old, yet is still like a woman in her early 20s. At its most uncharitable, you could say that her average lifespan could be around 40,000 years. Being the Mortal Kombat champion, he's gonna live for a long time if he keeps winning tournaments. Just winning a second in another 50 years time would guarantee that he will outlive everyone he knows from Earthrealm while still being physically frozen at 24 years old. She's someone he could spend an immortal's life with without having to worry about losing them in 50 to 60 years time. Hell, if the only tournaments held from this point on are against Outworld invaders every 50 years, he'd still need to win 200 of those just to reach Kitana's current age. But another thing I like about Kitana is that while Liu Kang is the main character of the portion of the story where Shao Kahn is the main villain, Kitana is Shao Kahn's true arch-enemy, not Liu Kang. Liu Kang's is Shang Tsung. He's a threat to Liu Kang, and Liu is the canonical victor, but he's more a big boss monster to Liu, and Kitana has a more personal stake in fighting Kahn. Plus their battle continues even after Kahn loses the main villain status. Shao Kahn is an obstacle in Liu Kang's life, but he's a lifelong enemy to Kitana. If anyone deserves to get a true final kill on Shao Kahn, it's Kitana. Which is why it pissed me off so much when MK11 finally gave us that for Aftermath to walk back on it. I've said before how criminally boring I find Sonya, so it's so great to have Kitana as the true female lead of the series, as she had so much more to the series than Sonya ever has or ever will. So it's a huge shame the modern era has been pushing her aside in favour of propping up Sonya again. As for her outfit, it's a simple one. For being a simple ninja costume that can't be too complex so as not to mess with the blue screen, it works. I will say that when I was 5 years old and playing this game for the first time, while Liu Kang was my favourite of the lot back then, I admit to having an embarrassing obsession with Kitana that I'm glad to say I managed to keep to myself back then and not let anyone else find out about. But that's as far as I'm willing to go with that subject. So next we have Mileena, Kitana's twin sister, tasked with keeping an eye on Kitana by Shao Kahn once he begins to suspect her and put a stop to her plans at any cost. This is only revealing endings properly, but gameplay makes it obvious, so I don't mind mentioning now that Mileena is not in fact Kitana's sister, in a biological sense. They were raised as if they were sisters, but she is in fact a clone originally intended to replace Kitana with a more loyal duplicate. But when she wasn't perfect, she was rejected and brought up as a different person entirely, only kept around as a useful tool to spy on Kitana. She only has 3 special moves. There's her soaring side by holding high punch for 3 seconds and releasing, which can also be done in the air. There's her teleport kick with forward forward low kick, and her roll with back back down high kick. First fatality is done with forward back forward low punch. Mileena will just repeatedly stab the opponent with her sai until they're dead. Kind of weak really. The issue is that this looks like a special move and not a fatality, like it would function just like Baraka's Blade Fury. Holding high kick for 3 seconds and releasing will have Mileena lower her mask to reveal her true Tarkatan mouth. She'll kiss the opponent and essentially inhale them, then spit out all the bones. That's more like it. Like the reptile head eating fatality, this is another one that disturbed me as a kid, just like, how did she even do that? For a friendship, holding back and pressing down 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 up and high kick will have Mileena plant a flower on the ground. One of the weaker ones to be honest, it just feels kind of generic. Her babality is down 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 high kick. Mileena was one I didn't play much of as a kid because I could only figure out the teleport kick and nothing else. Figuring out her other moves let me see how she's considered second only to Jax in competitive play. While I sometimes have trouble with the role, the teleport kick is so useful, and while the Sai supposedly needs 3 seconds, it feels like less. Of course, this does mean she's a nightmare when facing an AI Mileena. You just aren't allowed to jump because she instantly reacts with a jumping Sai of her own. Oh boy, Mileena. This is the only character where I have to really separate the character from the behaviour of their fanbase. As a character in the original timeline, Mileena is fine. She fits well enough into each game she was in, wasn't overused, wasn't underused. The game she wasn't in didn't need her. Original Mileena is a tragic character. The only reason she exists is because Shao Kahn loved the person she was cloned from, but knew there was a good chance she'd turn on him, so wanted the more obedient replacement. That's where the Tarkatan DNA comes in, a race that at one point in canon was genetically engineered through crossbreeding Outworld humans with Netherrealm demons so that they would serve Shao Kahn. But of course that DNA is the reason for her face, and her face is the reason she wasn't a perfect clone, and not being a perfect clone is why Shao Kahn rejected her in favour of keeping Kitana around. That's something to remember. If Mileena's cloning was a perfect success, she would not have been Mileena. She wouldn't have her own identity or be given that name. She would have been named Kitana, the real Kitana would have been quietly and secretly killed, and her and Shao Kahn would just continue on as normal as if she was the original Kitana all along. Hell, it's entirely possible that she was deemed a failure and rejected before she even became conscious for the first time. So if she was a success, she could have been born believing she was the original Kitana and would never know herself. The only reason she even has her own identity was because she was declared a failure, and yet she's the one who actually wants Shao Kahn to love her as a daughter, just to add to the twisted dynamic of this family. Also, a thing to remember is that she did know Kitana as her sister for at least 1,000 years. Although there are a few question marks with that. Mileena was created by Shang Tsung, but Shang Tsung can't be more than 1,000 years old, while Kitana is 10,000, meaning she would have been created when Kitana was around 9,000 years old. You could imagine a story being cooked up that she was thought dead for many millennia until they happened to find her again, and her mouth could be passed off as a disfigurement that occurred while she was missing, urging Kitana not to talk about it for fear of upsetting her. We don't know the specifics of what caused Kitana to look into her true past, but it is possible that although Kitana did see Mileena as her long-lost twin, that introducing Mileena to her that far in her life was what set off her suspicions in the first place and led to her looking into her own origins. There's many ways to interpret this, but I prefer this one because it means that Shao Kahn's desperation for a more loyal Kitana is what sets in motion her turning against him in the first place. I go into all this because it sets up so much interesting stuff, and Shao Kahn's so-called family is just so fucked up that it makes for a great story. So of course the current franchise has decided to cut every single interesting facet of that. Now they claim that Mileena was born during MK2, meaning her history and life with Kitana is gone. Now she was what Kahn always wanted, and he never loved Kitana, which just destroys Kahn and Kitana's dynamic and makes it non-existent. There is nothing interesting to Mileena as a character anymore. Honestly, becoming the de facto sex symbol of the franchise was the worst thing that ever happened to her, because what made her a good character in the first place has been stripped away in favour of adolescent titillation. Deception started it a little, but it was MK9 that destroyed this character. That's why we have stupid shit like the much hyped prize for clearing the long 300 stage challenge tower rewarding you with her worst ever costume. It's why MKX gave her those fucking stupid lips. They claim it was for realism so that her talking the way she did made biological sense, and yet they didn't do the same with Baraka and he can pronounce things fine. Let's be honest, it was so guys could easier fantasize about getting a blowjob from her and nothing else. It was an excuse. People are gonna argue in bad faith that I have an issue with portraying anything sexual, but that's not the case. For example, I do believe it makes sense and is in character that Mileena wears more revealing clothes than most of the cast. I just hate it when it's portrayed fucking stupidly. It bothers me so much with Mileena because that's all that's left of her. But of course Mileena is the only character where I feel I have to talk about fandom and fan reactions. If it wasn't for MK11, I wouldn't be talking about this. There are two things I would like certain Mileena fans to learn and remember, mainly the ones that came in with MK9. 1. Mortal Kombat has always had a fluid roster. Popular characters skip games all the time, not even the main character was safe from that, and usually missing a game ends up doing that character good. Sonya and Kano had a large popularity boost just from skipping this game, and nearly 30 years later we're still suffering the consequences. 2. Mileena is a B-lister, she always has been. After MK2, you know how long it took her to become a base roster character again? 4 games and 11 years. She wasn't in vanilla MK3 or MK4, only updates, and wasn't in Deadly Alliance at all. And it was fine, not a failing. The A-listers are pretty much the MK1 cast plus Kitana and Jax. The reaction to Mileena skipping one game was unacceptable. Ever since Deception, you've been catered to constantly. Mileena was one of the poster girls of that game's The B and C listers take centre stage push and one of the first characters revealed. She got a huge push in MK9 and MKX, even if her story in MK9 was worthless shit. You got it better than fans of most other characters. You are in no place to complain when she takes a game off and act like you were wronged. Oh boo hoo, my constantly exposed character takes a backseat for one game. Motherfuckers, try being fans of other characters. Fujin fans had to wait fucking years for a proper second chance. People have been wanting Kai and Reiko to get a true second chance for 25 years now. Nitara and Ashura have had a really interesting side story set up in Armageddon that's never gonna get followed up on. Fans of Serena have to deal with being exiled to a ludicrously expensive obscure GBA game and being a footnote in an all-in game. Try being a Motaro fan and having to deal with the fact that the franchise is desperately trying to avoid him as his full self-engine at all costs. Or any 3D character that isn't Kenshi, Boraicho or Frost, knowing that the only way your character will appear again is in a shallow cameo, flavour texting pre-fight intros, or just being killed off to feed the 3D character bad meme. Hell, I've been waiting for Chameleon, the female one, the one that's actually a character, to get any kind of spotlight. 26 years after the release of Trilogy? Nope. My own favourite character has never had his own proper second go yet, only appearing riding the coattails of another because most of the work is done and then being left in the background anyway. The only games he's been in since his debut were just because he had to and not because anyone working on him wanted it. Not every popular character can get in every game, that's what the roster is always fluid means. So forgive me for not having much sympathy when she misses one game. If it was fans of Liu Kang, Kitana, Jax or Raiden behaving this way, I would be saying the exact same thing. So yeah, I do think them caving and including Mileena anyway was a bad choice. I would have gladly swapped her for any other female character, even ones I like less than Mileena. And I do admit, the behaviour of Mileena fans has certainly soured my desire to ever see her again. Plus, not to gatekeep, but the fact that most of these people got in with MK9, so they were behaving in such an obscene way over a total nothing version of this character instead of the good one, makes it so much more annoying. But in the interest of being fair, I will argue against one bad faith criticism I've seen a few times. Some people claim that the only reason Mileena got so much demand and rabid fandom is because of her bisexuality. You know, when someone doesn't have an argument and they always default to, they're only popular because they're a minority. You know the bollocks. And it's bullshit. Mileena's fanbase boom started from MK9. Her bisexuality wouldn't come out until after MKX's release 4 years later, through the comic and DLC. I normally wouldn't go off on a fanbase like this, but it drives me up the wall with any franchise when a fandom has their character get in almost everything while others struggle for a single appearance, then cry foul from missing one game. I felt the same way towards Waluigi fans when he wasn't in Mario Kart 7. Like, they got every single spin-off since about 2002, but missed one spin-off roster in the last 20 years and suddenly they're being victimised.
Honey Queen was a good addition actually.
But enough of that, next is the final playable character. Like Reptile, made playable for the first time, is Shang Tsung. I saved Shang Tsung for last because on the arcade ladder, he is always faced last out of the playable cast, just before the bosses. So after Shang Tsung managed to talk his way out of execution for losing both Goro and the tournament, Shao Kahn restored Shang's youth to make him a bigger threat in the tournament. At this point, Shang's hatred of Liu is solidified and he leads the attack on Liu's temple and Johnny's film set to provoke the acceptance of the tournament. Of course, he's always holding out hope that he can overthrow Shao Kahn himself and take power for himself. Shang has 3 special moves of his own: a single flaming skull with back high punch, 2 flaming skulls with back forward high punch, and 3 flaming skulls with back forward high punch. It's not a large moveset, but his main gimmick is retaining his ability to morph into every other playable character in the game. I'm not listing all the morphs because they don't matter, I just press block 3 times to morph into Kitana and win that way. His first fatality, up down up low kick, is the first in-game appearance of his Soul Steal. This one is my favourite version of it, for the way he holds them up and the way the opponent's flesh just withers away. Holding high kick for 2 seconds and releasing has him enter the opponent's body through the ear and make them explode from within. Another good one. The idea of Shang controlling a person's body from the inside to kill them works really well and made for a really disturbing scene in Battle for the Realms. But Shang gets a secret third fatality too. Holding low punch for 30 seconds, so basically the entire round, and releasing will have him morph into Kintaro and punch the opponent's upper body off. That's a really cool secret and I'm sure it just fueled all the rumours of super secret Kano morphs and the like. His friendship, back down high kick, has him create a rainbow in his hands. Like the Jax friendship, it's made by the cheesy grin. His babality is back forward down high kick. There isn't much to say about Shang gameplay wise, his special moves are so simple as the morphs are his main gimmick. Like Reptile, because I got both the first two games on the same day, I missed out on the excitement of Shang Tsung finally being playable. For me, the fact that Shang Tsung was an old guy and final boss was a weird novelty. So if there isn't much to say about playing as him, how about playing against him? People often remember the game's bosses as being the hardest part of the game in single player. Nah mate, Shang Tsung is worse than both of them. Being the last of the normal characters you face every time, his AI is the most aggressive, always reacting perfectly to every action you make, knowing which character to morph into to counter yours. Almost every playthrough spent at least 20 minutes stuck on this arsehole. Nightmare. I said a couple episodes ago in Tekken 2 that demoting a boss to a regular part of the playable cast is always a risk. It can end up taking away the character's charm, presence or menace when they have to be like any other character. And while Shang gets a raw deal in a couple other games and other bosses don't make that transition well, in this game, Shang Tsung still works well. Giving him his youth back is a good way to keep him a threat. Sure, he's not a boss anymore, but being younger makes him an even more capable fighter than before. It's also the game that kicks off his relationship to Shao Kahn, needing him for power but wanting to get out from under his rule while fearing him at the same time. As for his costume, it's an attempt at recreating his young self's costume from the MK1 comic, but with the red swapped for black. Other details had to be dropped as I assumed they'd mess with the blue screen like the ponytail. I like this one, but it's nowhere near a favourite. One that if returned I'd be happy to see, but probably never use. And that's the playable cast covered. A good roster with a lot of great new characters that removed the only characters from the first game I didn't like. But a huge part of this series is the atmosphere, especially in this game. It's the game that introduces us to Outworld, so let's have a look at those stages, going in order of actual stage rotation. First we have the Deadpool. How would you follow up a narrow walkway over a massive drop? A narrow walkway over a pool of acid? This is one of those classic stages that has returned a few times over the years, but the original still looks good. And with the rumour mill going absolutely batshit trying to find hidden secrets that didn't exist, the doors you can't open on the ends and the hooks for a rumoured stage fatality are good to drive people to madness. Of course, this does have a stage fatality. Holding low punch and low kick and uppercutting will knock the opponent into the acid, followed by their skeleton bobbing back out. Also the origin of
Oh what?
Always a classic. Next up we have the Combat Tomb, one of the most neglected stages from this game. It was copy pasted into Trilogy but has never appeared in a fighting game again, only in Shaolin Monks. It's not my favourite stage, but it looks cool. We have the dragon creatures flying in the background to show how diverse and dangerous Outworld is, and even Outworld's sunset doesn't look the same as Earth's. It also has a stage fatality. But the other stage fatalities all have a unique input for each character, and I couldn't be asked learning them or listing them. But I still have footage because the AI loves to use them. In this stage fatality, you uppercut the opponent into the spiked ceiling just hidden out of sight. I remember first seeing this one was quite a shock actually. It was like, that's the fatality noise, where are they going to punch? Whoa! Gotta point out the Easter egg of holding down on both sticks to make it drop off the spikes. That's fun. But then we get my favourite stage in the game, the Wasteland. Story-wise, these places are where Baraka and the Tarkans tend to live around. This stage is MK2 to me, and it represents Outworld perfectly. We have the lifeless remains of the realm conquered and merged into Outworld, the empty castle in the background, the bodies held upon spears, and the piles of skulls and statues to show that this place had its own people and art and culture that's just gone, and that's the power Shao Kahn has. But most importantly, the purple sky. Outworld has a purple sky and MKX was an arsehole to try and undo that with don't believe everything you see on the internet. I really hate MKX's Outworld a lot. John Tobias' Outworld was inspired by feudal Japan and his general love of many different Asian cultures, but MKX's Outworld looks like a war-torn third world country from a naff 2004 war film, just with a few monsters put in the background. All the soul was sucked out of it. Of course they did that in the same game they made it all about the US military too. What I'm saying is that MKX is the one that feels most like it's ashamed to be a Mortal Kombat game. Why would you make Outworld look dull, NRS? But yeah, the Wasteland. Amazing in all its future versions, but this one still wins out for me for the absolute lifelessness of it. It's more effective to me than the updates Armageddon and MK9 added. Next is the Evil Tower, also sometimes just called Air Combat. Another good one. I've always loved the shape of that window and of course the Shadow Priest floating in front of it. They're a cult of sorcerers that worship Shao Kahn led by Shang Tsung. This tower is where they operate. Of course this fueled rumours of being able to fight or even play as this specific Shadow Priest, normally named Cloak by the fans. Of all the rumour characters they've legitimised later on, I'm honestly surprised we haven't seen a playable Shadow Priest yet. I like that. I know Shang Tsung is their leader and he's playable, but I mean one of these ones, just a member of the cult in the purple robes. But knowing this franchise and the fandom's obsession with palette swap ninjas, we'd be more likely to get fucking Chrome before anything worthwhile. These guys also had a very memorable appearance in the Conquest TV series. People might be wondering how I feel about the normal blue sky considering what I was saying about the Wasteland. I actually don't mind in the 2 stages we have with the blue sky. That's because both of them are so high they are above the clouds, as if the purple sky only covers Outworld to a certain height, and above the clouds things look normal. There's also the way the clouds rush by the window, which is also fuel for speculation. Does the tower move? Does time flow faster at the top? All this stuff is why I love the world this game built up. Next stage in the rotation is probably the most recurring stage from this game, just equal with the Deadpool, the Living Forest. Of course, Outworld, being such a strange and dangerous place, has a forest where all the trees are sentient and have faces. This is also my favourite version of the Living Forest. It's the one where the faces look just right. Later games either have the faces look goofy or they don't move at all, but these ones look the most human, which makes them the most off-putting. Gotta love the guy in the cone hat being strangled by the vines too. Plus there's the 2 on the ends of the stage laughing. The fact that these trees open their mouths to roar also gave fuel to rumours of a stage fatality where you can get the opponent eaten by them, which later games will finally make happen. But in terms of hinting at secrets that are actually in the game, sometimes poking from behind the trees will be a male ninja in grey and a female ninja wearing green, but we'll deal with those 2 later. I do miss these blatant teasers and mysteries woven into the games. Can't do that today because the game will just be data mined even before release and we'll know everything right away. Shame. So Shaolin monks would later introduce more humanoid trees with claws that were still rooted in the ground. I always liked the idea of a humanoid living tree that can act as a fighter, almost like Mortal Kombat's equivalent of an Ent from Lord of the Rings. You could even make it a large one and have it be a sub-boss. The series hasn't had a new sub-boss monster since Murloc in Deadly Alliance, and that game was 20 years ago. It's just been reuse of old ones, usually Goro. It would just add to the amount of playable races native to Outworld. After that stage we have the Armory. It's not bad, but I think it's the least interesting stage in the game. Yeah, we have some weapons lying around in the background and some molten metal, but I don't actually find any of it noticeable. The most eye-catching part of it is just having a big dragon logo in the background. And other stages in the series do having a big dragon logo in the background better. Best part of this stage is the music. But then we get the pit too, the other stage high enough in the sky to get a blue sky. This is much cooler than the original pit, with the spiked bridges, the mountains and a second bridge in the background. However, don't mistake that for me being happy that recent games have just included this stage and passed it off as the original pit. The original was the perfect design and size for Shang Tsung's small island. Trying to claim these huge mountain ranges are on Shang's island and not Outworld doesn't work. This stage does have its own fatality, being uppercutted off the bridge to reveal no spikes but just a stone floor. It's less gory, but this one is far more brutal to me. Like, of course the original pit didn't need spikes to kill people with the size of that drop. Plus the camera follows them face on as they approach the ground, but it also makes sense that there are no spikes. The pit was designed as an arena on Shang Tsung's island, but this one just seems to be a normal place that people need to use that bridge to cross. There was never any need to put spikes there. But we can't move on before talking about that bridge in the background and the 2 palette swapped Liu Kang sprites, one of which is on fire. Only added there to add some life to the stage, they took on a life of their own as even more rumoured hidden characters, dubbed Hornbuckle for the Liu Kang with green stripes and Torch for the Liu Kang on fire. Torch would later be made a hidden character in Deadly Alliance as Blaze, but Hornbuckle has been left behind. But Hornbuckle did gain some very basic story in Deadly Alliance as part of Blaze's backstory. Do I think Hornbuckle should become a real character? I don't see the harm in adding a worshipper of Onaga who has a green stripe down his trousers to a later game. Obviously he wouldn't be a straight up Liu Kang colour swap if he was included, but even if he was, a Liu Kang palette swap would be preferable to Chrome or Hydro or whatever new palette swap ninja people start clamouring for. I'd have taken him in MKX over Tremor. I do wonder how likely they'd use the name Hornbuckle though. It's not a copyrighted name. Remember, Blaze wasn't named Torch so as to avoid infringing on Marvel's Human Torch. The name comes from a secret character hint in the Super Nintendo port saying, Hornbuckle who? Just another in-joke referencing a woman named Leanne Hornbuckle who had some connection to that port. But you know what does drive me insane? All those extra unlockable colours for Liu in MK11 and they don't have a Hornbuckle colour? They have a green, but it's not the Hornbuckle green. Just let me play as Liu Kang with a neon green stripe, you arseholes. Moving on, the portal. This is a great one and it's important to the game's story. This is where the Earthrealm fighters entered Outworld from. Back in the original timeline, people actually had to travel to natural portals to make their way to other realms. This was a big deal. We didn't have the thing where every vaguely magical character all had the ability to open portals to anywhere. But this stage looks amazing. The red-orange sky swirling into the portal in the background with electricity flashing around the centre. We have more Shadow Priest, which is always good to see. We have that enormous orange moon up there. This is such an amazing stage, one of the best in the series. Finally, we have Khan's Arena. Another great recurring stage where the original version is my favourite. We have Shao Kahn sat in the middle, overlooking the fight with his scepter full of blood. We have that purple sky I love so much, and there's Sonya and Kano chained up on display to show what's at stake. So even though they aren't playable, they still have a memorable presence. I love the look of the stands and the structures on top. This is still the most populated looking version of the arena, and even though the animation in those stands is limited, it really shows Outworld's culture as a place that loves combat even outside of Shao Kahn's rule. That's all of them, and I still maintain that MK2 has one of the best stage selections in the series. There's no stinkers, and the only one that isn't good is just fine. They have just the right amount of detail to maintain that oppressive Outworld atmosphere without going too far and ruining it. An issue many later games will have when reimagining stages from the original trilogy is that they'll tend to over-design them, which ends up robbing them of the atmosphere. The MK9 Soul Chamber comes to mind. Before I move on to the bosses, we have some secret characters to cover, those two ninjas hiding in the Living Forest. Like Reptile in the first game, these two have a very small chance of appearing to you to give you vague hints on where to find them. Let's start with the Green Kitana, since she's the easiest one to find. Some of them are red herrings that mean nothing except to get people looking for secrets that aren't there, so I'll ignore those. The important ones are, I am called Jade, before the question mark, I will meet you in Goro's lair, I am one of 3, restrict yourself, and alone is how you will find me. It doesn't give you all the clues, but in the arcade ladder, after the first 11 characters and before Shang Tsung, there's a question mark icon that you just move over. When you fight the character below that question mark, you must win a single round using only low kicks. You can't even block, but special attacks that use low kicks like Liu Kang's bicycle kick and Melina's teleport kick are still allowed. Doing so will have the game tell you that you're about to face an undiscovered foe from Mortal Kombat 1. That is a fucking lie, just put in there to squeeze some extra money out of MK1 from people who go back to it trying to find something that isn't there. We're then told we're going back to Goro's lair to fight Jade. Jade is a souped up version of Kitana that moves twice as fast and cannot be harmed by projectiles. I won't go much into secret character stories because they're barely in the game and it's not until their next appearances they become relevant. All there is to say about her here is that she's one of Kitana and Melina's fellow assassins who isn't taking part in the tournament and is Kitana's best friend. Like with MK1, I'll be defeating the secret characters on the Super Nintendo port because there's a much less time wasting method to keep challenging them. But next is that grey dude. He shares some tips with Jade, but his own important ones are I am called Smoke, Toasty, You Can Start Finding Me, and Portal. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is the Toasty sound clip. First part of Scorpion's MK1 fatality. Now after uppercuts there's a small chance that the game's composer, and person who actually says Toasty, Dan Forden, will pop up in the corner of the screen to say it. This is one of my favourite Easter eggs and every game in the series should keep it as long as Forden is involved. If through some unlikely scenario a Mortal Kombat character gets in Smash, Dan Forden popping up in the corner and yelling Toasty should definitely happen in whatever stage it gets. But anyway, on the Portal stage, just keep uppercutting until you get a Toasty and then quickly press down and start for the same lie you were told with Jade, but now you're facing Smoke. Named because he always has smoke coming off of his body. He's kind of a mix of all 3 playable ninjas like MK1 Reptile, but not in the same way. He has Scorpion's moveset, Reptile's standing animation, and Sub-Zero's wind pose. He also has Jade's double speed and projectile immunity. The only bit of story he has is that he is also a Lin Kuei assassin doing things behind the scenes while the tournament goes on and is Sub-Zero's best friend. But both Jade and Smoke say, I am one of 3, but the third is hinted at in no way apart from this. You have to win 50 consecutive matches to trigger a fight with Noob Saibot. He's a pure black ninja sprite with no definition, Scorpion's moveset again, and Sub-Zero's wind pose once more, but also Sub-Zero's stance. Noob has no story at all in this game, because writer and co-creator John Tobias didn't even know he was in the game. Although based on the pattern with the other two, it'd probably just be he's Reptile's best friend or something. But Reptile has no friends. He wasn't in the initial arcade release, only snuck in later revisions. He doesn't even have his own announcer call.
Feel the power of Toasty!
In fact, even going into MK3's development, other co-creator Ed Boon was the only member of the team who knew he was in the game. Also yes, his name is Boon and Tobias backwards. Did you also know Mario 2 is Doki Doki Panic in Japan? Everyone fucking knows. Well right, let's have a quick chat about Goro's lair. When I first discovered Jade, seeing an old MK1 stage I never knew was in the game otherwise was mind-blowing. Really sells that undiscovered MK1 secret lie. It also doesn't get its usual theme, it gets a very short new theme that hasn't appeared anywhere else, and I love it. There's something so downbeat about it, like no one is supposed to be here or has any reason to be there. There's nothing left, Goro is presumed dead and even the glowing eyes in the back are gone. This track only appears here in the arcade version, as the console ports just use themes from other stages, so I was taken by surprise when I played this version years later and finally heard this. Enough diversions though, it's time for the bosses. After defeating Shang Tsung we face Kintaro. After Goro, Kano and Sonya fell into the pit and fell through a portal back into Outworld, since Goro wasn't found, the Shokan all assumed their prince was dead. Goro's dad, King Gorbak, appointed Kintaro to take Goro's place as a Shokan representative in the tournament. This leads to him being a part of Outworld's attack on Johnny's film set and sparking a rivalry with Jax. All we know about him is that he's very angry at Goro's death. Kintaro is much harder to fight than Goro. He has the usual punches that send you flying across the screen and uppercuts that send you off the screen, but his special moves are different. He spits out explosive fireballs and has his teleport stomp. He'll fly off screen, land on you, and then jump on you a further 4 or 5 times. He'll also just stop fighting to roar at you. But what makes him truly a nightmare is his ability to throw you even when you're in the air. Even when you're doing a special move, his throw will override it. The bullshit is especially obvious when you're playing as Mileena, as you'll just freeze mid-teleport kick for him to throw you. He's the hardest boss in the original timeline, I'd say, but Shang Tsung is still a bigger pain in this game. Usually jump kicking is the best way to deal with him. If you get the angle just right, he can't deal with it. Also, when he tries to do the teleport stomp, jump away and kick to knock him out of it. And definitely exploit those roars to get a hit in if you can. Kintaro is my favourite character in the series, as you may have guessed by my username. First it was Liu, but Kintaro eventually took over. Is it because he's especially interesting? Not really, he's one of the least developed characters in the series. He's so underused and neglected he's essentially a 3D era character. What Kintaro was for me for years was one challenge I just couldn't overcome. It took me about 7 or 8 years until I finally defeated Kintaro legitimately. When the character you can't beat looks so cool and is more unique than anyone else in the game due to his body shape, then that stands out in your mind. And if you've watched my other fighting game videos, you know I love the underused and obscure fighting game characters, and Kintaro fits that perfectly. His stop motion model also blends in with the digitised actors so much better than Goro did. I said before that Goro was very clearly claymation, but with Kintaro it's much harder to tell. And Kintaro has always been cooler than Goro, I'm just gonna say it. Sure, Goro came first, but when comparing them, that's all he's got. Kintaro's got the tiger stripes, he's a bigger challenge, and he has the better moves. And you know how I can say Kintaro has the better moves? Because when they keep bringing Goro back, they keep giving him Kintaro's moveset instead of his own. Goro in MK4 is just Kintaro wearing a Goro skin from a gameplay perspective. In Armageddon, Kintaro is missing his own iconic move, but Goro has it instead. In MKX, because there was never enough to work with for the forced variation system, he just has to have Kintaro's moveset as one of them. This is another issue I have with this series. If Goro is such a better character than Kintaro that Goro needs to be brought back all the time and Kintaro has to languish, then why do they need to keep giving Goro Kintaro's shit to justify Goro's returns? If Su Hao is such an irredeemable character, and Kano is so great he has to be in everything, then why does Kano need to keep stealing Su Hao's shit to justify his constant appearances? We keep getting told older characters are better, but the older characters keep having to steal from the newer characters to justify their worth. I know Kintaro isn't new, but he's newer than Goro. Also, know what Kintaro has that Goro hasn't? A story that hasn't been ruined. Granted, that's because he barely has any story because they keep neglecting him, but still. And this isn't even me complaining about the reboot this time. Original timeline Goro was ruined and has never recovered, which is why I haven't liked that character in like around a decade and a half. Ironically enough, the story that ruined Goro would have fit Kintaro perfectly and both characters would still be good. Also, want to hear me actually compliment the reboot? You're in for a rare treat. I prefer MK9's backstory for Kintaro over John Tobias' original idea for him. Tobias imagined Kintaro as also a high-ranking member of Shokan society, and he and Goro were like brothers in arms. And it's fine, but it doesn't add much to Kintaro. The reboot instead made Kintaro's subspecies of Shokan part of the lower classes. I like this because in this game he's almost like the people's champ. The audience can be heard cheering him when he wins. So now he's someone that, through fighting skill, has overcome the Shokan class system to become a star in his own right. It also adds a little depth to the Shokan race, establishing Kintaro's tiger stripes as a trait belonging to a certain race of Shokan. And it opens up the imagination. We have Dragon Shokan and Tiger Shokan. What other versions are out there? Are they based on the Chinese zodiac, which contains the dragon and tiger? Are there Ox Shokan with horns? Are there Rooster Shokan with feathers instead of fur or scales? If Goro is the upper class and Kintaro is the lower class, who are the middle classes? Sadly, we'll probably never know, as only one more Shokan was introduced after Kintaro, and that was all the way back in 1995, and the only ones we see in the background just look like copy-pasted Goros. This is something I would like to see in the series moving forward. New members of the Outworld races to expand on them. It's been 29 years and Baraka is still the only Tarkatan on the roster. More Shokan please. How about a second Centaur? How about a Centaur at all again? Put a ban on making any more Special Forces characters and use that time on some of these, or literally anything else that isn't the Special Forces or Black Dragon. Oh yeah, another reason this game's roster is so great. It's the only game in the series with 0 Black Dragon presence on the playable roster. That's worthy of praise. But anyway, Kintaro's original design is his best one. It's perfect for him and has never been topped. Later games will keep trying to push the feline aspects, and it never works. Armageddon wasn't too bad, but MK9 has stripped his design of any menace by giving him an unthreatening kitty face. It's awful, just leave it at the stripes. One last anecdote before I move on. I said before I first played this game on the Super Nintendo. When I saw Kintaro's icon on the arcade ladder, I saw his face and thought he was a Boom Boom from Super Mario Bros. 3, and considered that all the Super Nintendo games I had took place in a shared universe. That's not even the weirdest assumption I made at 5 years old. Also, MK1 Sonya's head looked like a Buster Beetle to me, forgot to mention that last time. After defeating Kintaro, we finally take on the Emperor of Outworld, Shao Kahn. Shao Kahn has been Emperor for possibly hundreds of thousands of years, using the Mortal Kombat tournament to merge other realms with Outworld and make himself more powerful by stripping them bare of souls. Then using the surviving warriors willing to join him to invade even more. Earthrealm is a big sore point to him because he's now lost his chance to invade at the last hurdle twice. First Shang Tsung when he was defeated by the Great Kung Lao, and now when Liu Kang won the first game. And of course he's Kitana's father and ordered the creation of Mileena, but we've been through all that already. Shao Kahn is tough, but he's actually easier than Kintaro. His punches and kicks do send you flying, but his main threat is his shoulder charge, which takes priority over almost everything and is incredibly hard to counter as it requires perfect timing. He could trap you in a corner with 4 shoulder charges to kill you and you couldn't do anything about it. He also has these green arrows that in the realms of boss projectiles aren't much of the problem. He also just likes to stop and point at you to taunt you. Original Timeline Shao Kahn is my favourite final boss in the series. He has an intimidation factor that he just couldn't keep when the series moved away from digitised actors. Just this huge dude that arrives on your home planet and just eats the souls of almost all the living beings. But he's also interesting with his relationship with his daughters, but we know that already. Then MK3 adds even more to it. Also, it was a good way to build him up by revealing the big boss of the first game had his own boss even he is terrified of. In fact, that's another aspect of Shao Kahn. Almost everyone who works for him is doing so out of fear. If any of them had the chance or ability to kill him, they would, but they can't. The only person at this stage who is loyal to him is Mileena, and even that can easily change, plus Kahn himself treats her with contempt. Then there's the fact he actively ridicules you in the middle of the fight, you are so little threat to him. Like Shang Tsung in MK1, Shao Kahn is also the announcer in this game, which makes sense as he's running the tournament. He's voiced by pinball legend Steve Ritchie, and it's such a great voice. I'd say it's one of the best voices in a game from that era.
Fatality. Flawless victory. Excellent. Well done. Superb. Friendship. Friendship? Mileena. Baraka. Scorpion. Raiden. I am Shao Kahn. I rule this world. Prepare to die. You are nothing. Is that your best? All too easy. You weak, pathetic fool.
One thing you notice listening to these is that, yes, Shao Kahn has a very deep and menacing voice, but he's not very shouty. He sounds very calm and smooth, and that only breaks when he's being hit when you fight him. The only performance since that has ever matched this was Jeff Meek's Shao Kahn in Conquest. It makes the moments where he does actually get angry all the more tense, because the issue I've had with Shao Kahn in the last decade or so is that depth and his cool demeanour have been removed in favour of just making him a giant shouty toddler. When he was revealed as pre-order DLC for MK11 and reactors were making their O faces for the thumbnails, I was not celebrating. I saw how boring they made him in MK9 and I knew that would be what they'd stick with, and I was right. Shao Kahn in the reboot timeline is just nothing, just a boring arsehole. Another big issue with Shao Kahn in the reboot timeline is the desperation to put him on top again with MK11. Sure, he's not the boss, but he's still presented as a bigger threat. But that's the thing, Shao Kahn is the villain of the original trilogy, and that's it. His time has passed after MK3, and even when he did return before the reboot, he wasn't in the role of main villain because it was the turns of Shinnok, the Deadly Alliance, and Onaga. I never want to see Shao Kahn in the role of main villain in the games again. Like, I honestly don't know how someone can look at him in MK11, see this giant lumbering baby shouting, "Wife, wife," and think, that guy's cool. I do have some more praise for good Shao Kahn, but he'll have to wait for MK3. As for his outfit, like Kintaro, Shao Kahn's original design is perfect. Outworld is based on feudal Japan filtered through Western comics, so Shao Kahn is like a huge barbaric samurai mixed with a wrestler. The spiked shoulders are great and the helmet is absolutely perfect, and it drives me mad they never released an official replica of it. The issue with later Shao Kahn designs is they either under-design him so he just looks bland and pathetic, or they over-design him and he just looks fucking stupid. Why is the helmet so huge? It looks awful. Why has he got dragon scales? He's not a fucking dragon. He doesn't have any relation to the Shokan by the way, other than a slightly similar sounding name. Once again, I feel Conquest was the only product to give Shao Kahn a redesign that actually looks good. They should have put that in MK11. And one last whinge. Shao Kahn's face looks like this. He has claws growing out of his forehead. He's not a bootleg Ninja Turtle. And with every character covered and the entire viewing audience driven away, it's time to defeat him.
Feel the wrath. No. No.
Liu Kang goes into a revenge-fueled frenzy and utterly annihilates Shao Kahn. He returns to the ruins of his temple to pay his respects to his adopted family and come to terms with the fact that this was just another part of his destiny as champion. Kung Lao simply wins the tournament and avenges the death of his ancestor, the Great Kung Lao, but has even more challenges in his future. This is also the first in-game appearance of the Great Kung Lao after first being seen in the MK1 comic. Apparently he's Mickey Rooney. Johnny Cage's victory makes him an even bigger celebrity, and he makes a sequel to his Mortal Kombat movie. Mortal Kombat 2 becomes the biggest motion picture of all time, and Johnny realises that MK3 is inevitable. Yeah, little does he know of his upcoming fate in that game. While hiding in the background, Reptile discovers the true reason his race is endangered. Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung have been working them to death through slavery, leaving the race with very little survivors. And so he kills Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung to free the remaining members of his race so they can live in peace. Yes, Reptile wasn't the last of his kind in MK2. His next appearance is the first time he was referred to as the last. Sub-Zero's ending finally gives us answers. When Sub-Zero didn't return to the Lin Kuei after the first tournament because he was dead, they sent out a second assassin and gave him the Sub-Zero codename to finish the assassination job on Shang Tsung. This new Sub-Zero is the original's younger brother. He ends up being spared by Scorpion, but he doesn't find out why. So this is what I meant when I said As Sub-Zero was the most developed character in the series, but not the guy from the first game. Of course everyone knows this by now, but I presented it this way to remind people that at one point this was an actual surprise. Shang Tsung turns on Shao Kahn and kills him, winning the tournament and taking over his armies. He also gets to merge Earthrealm into Outworld and with the Shadow Priests send a horde of demons into it to plunge it into darkness forever. Have a nice day. This was the last time Have a Nice Day was used for a bleak ending until MK11, 26 years later. Kitana, through her years working as an assassin, not only discovered that Mileena was her clone and not her sister, but that Shao Kahn isn't her biological father. Her parents were the previous rulers of Outworld. Edenia hasn't been rewritten to be its own thing yet, and Kahn overthrew them, taking Kitana as his own child. Kitana overthrows Shao Kahn in return and restores Outworld to its original form. Yeah, the abandoned castle in the back of the wastelands, it belonged to Kitana's parents. Jax manages to free both Kano and Sonya. Jax and Sonya escape back to Earthrealm through the portal, but Kano manages to avoid arrest. The two know that they'll be seeing more of him in the future. Using Shao Kahn's suspicions of Kitana as a distraction, Mileena takes a chance to kill him herself and makes herself queen with her secret lover Baraka as her king. How much of their relationship is genuine isn't really stated. I like to believe that they are close and there's more than just a physical attraction there, in Baraka's case at least, but not close enough to not be willing to betray each other if it will benefit them, as later games will reveal. Baraka, known for his unpredictable fits of rage, wipes out the Earthrealm fighters and then turns his rage on Shang Tsung, Kintaro and Shao Kahn. The Tarkatan Horde then rise up to eliminate the rest of Kahn's army, leaving Baraka to take the Outworld throne. Watching Sub-Zero throughout the tournament, Scorpion sees him spare a defeated opponent's life. This makes Scorpion realise that this is not the same man who murdered him when he begged to be spared. Instead, Scorpion realises that this must be how he earns his peace and escape from hell. He'll instead protect this new Sub-Zero to atone for murdering his brother. This is the best ending in the game for how much depth it gives Scorpion. These two short paragraphs make him seem more than just an angry boy, and it sets up for a great story for him in the next game. People, and the franchise itself, keep harping on the Scorpion Sub-Zero rivalry, but never seem to realise that MK2 put it to bed, with only one more game in the original timeline using it again. Finally, Raiden utterly destroys not just Shao Kahn, but his entire army. Not enough for him, he then destroys all the portals linking Earthrealm to Outworld, preventing anyone from that realm from trying to invade again. But of course, those endings all contradict each other, so like with the first game, I'll go over the canon ending. Once again, new information revealed only in endings is still canon without the need of that character to win the tournament. This time we have a lot less information as to who fought who. Between tournament matches, Kitana meets up with Liu Kang to share information with him. Reptile learns that Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn are working his race to extinction, but doesn't dare stand up to them. Scorpion watches Sub-Zero spare an opponent. He then defeats Sub-Zero in a match against him, but spares him. He vows to protect this Sub-Zero for killing his brother, but doesn't tell Sub-Zero. Jax faces Kintaro and loses, making him realise that being the strongest man on Earth means nothing if he can't defeat Outworld monsters and decides he needs an upgrade. Raiden may or may not have saved Jax from being killed by blowing Kintaro up, but almost 30 years later, the canonicity of this claim is still unknown. Jax manages to free Sonya and Kano, but Kano manages to evade capture before they can return to Earth. Mileena discovers Kitana giving Liu Kang information and prepares to report to Shao Kahn, but a fight breaks out that results in Kitana killing Mileena. This leads to Kitana being arrested for Mileena's murder. And the winner is no one. Liu Kang is claimed to be the winner, I guess technically, but no one actually faced Shao Kahn. He abandoned the tournament when he found that his backup plan was so close to completion. Once the Earth Warriors learn of this, they have to escape Outworld and prepare for a full-scale invasion in Mortal Kombat 3. I don't know if you've noticed, but I adore this game. Mortal Kombat 1 was a good game, but Mortal Kombat 2 is where the series became something special. I love the world it creates, the atmosphere and the story it tells. I still find it fun to play, with other people, the AI is atrocious. I've said before that for me, story and atmosphere is more important than gameplay when it comes to Mortal Kombat, and this one pulls off both well. Is it my favourite Mortal Kombat? I honestly can't say right now. I know my top 3 games in the series, and this game is one of 2 vying for the top spot, but what I can say is that Mortal Kombat 2 is my favourite game played for this show so far. But I couldn't just leave it there, could I? I mean, I could, but I didn't want to. The Super Nintendo port is how I was introduced to this game, and it's the version I've played the most. It may also be the one I have the least to talk about. That's because it's as perfect as you can get on the Super Nintendo. It plays perfectly, it has all the characters with every single finisher intact. The graphics and sound took a slight downgrade, but the game still looks and sounds good. Although, as I said earlier, Goro's lair does lose its theme and uses the Deadpools instead. And we do lose the intro story images for a block of text over the living forest. One complaint I do have is that while the first game's Super Nintendo port has unlimited continues, this one limits you to 5. And while the game does have 5 difficulty choices and normal is still easier than the arcade, 5 still isn't enough, even for very easy. But there is a cheat to bump that up to 30 credits which you can just keep inputting. And in fact, that's how I dealt with defeating the secret characters. Each of them have codes that allow you to face them right away. This is very handy because no way was I going to spend hours repeating 50 matches just to get wiped out by Noob constantly. In fact, my copy of this game freezes when you try to fight Noob legitimately. So many times I built up those 50 wins in 2-player for the game to freeze at player 1 get ready. I mainly beat them by just spamming Mileena's teleport kick. I wish I knew that as a kid. Noob was trickier though and kept blocking, so I had to time him out, destroying my thumb from all that spamming. A strange quirk is that for some reason, Johnny's costumes are swapped. Player 1 now has him wearing red. I remember as a kid discovering Sprite comics at the Combat Pavilion and seeing everyone using Johnny in blue, wondering why they were always using the second player colour, because I hadn't played the arcade version yet. And like the first game's home port, Raiden's name is spelled with a Y. Another extra is a secret team battle mode, where both players can choose a team of 4 to face each other until one player runs out of characters. It's a fun extra, but since there was no one around while I was recording, it's just me beating up nobody. This part also has one of my favourite Easter eggs. Holding the shoulder buttons when you start the game will have Kintaro mangle the Acclaim logo while Shao Kahn taunts it. If MK12 is going to be a total coward and put multiple guests over neglected MK characters again, can at least one of those guests be the Acclaim logo out for revenge? It'd still be better than Leatherface. And before I finish the game, one last anecdote to show how my 5-year-old mind worked. This game was the first time I'd heard of the concept of rounds. So before my parents corrected me, I thought Shao Kahn was saying round woman at the start of the fights. And I thought he was talking about Kitana because I guess her head is round, sure. Moving on. ending pictures are still there, but they're very squished down. But yeah, I still adore this version, and I still come back to it now, even with access to the arcade version. Then we have the Mega Drive part. I played a tiny bit of this as a kid, when my grandmother had a Dreamcast disc with a load of Mega Drive games burned on it. I didn't play much because it just looked and sounded off, and I still believe that today. While last time the Mega Drive part was better, this time the Super Nintendo wins. The game still plays fine, even when you use a normal 3-button controller, so no complaints there. All the finishes carried over too. Graphics took a bigger downgrade, and honestly, I believe it looks less appealing than the first game's Mega Drive part. There's missing sprites like Baraka's wind pose just stopping halfway through. Some stages lack details too. The Shadow Priest is missing from the Evil Tower. They also couldn't fit in Goro's lair for the secret characters, but they at least made up for it. Instead they thought on a blue version of the portal that only exists in this version. I think it looks quite good actually, but they also didn't change Kitana's skin tone for Jade, so she's white in this version. Soundtrack took a hit. I know people swear by the Mega Drive soundtracks, but I think every single Mega Drive part from this series has sounded awful, and I just don't get what people are seeing in it. There's missing tracks too. The character select theme is gone and replaced with a version of the Portal theme, and it sounds wrong, like I'm playing a bootleg. And for some reason, Khan's Arena uses the Wasteland theme even though it normally shares a theme with the Portal, and that track is still there. The Goro's Lair theme is now used for the endings, and the normal ending theme is gone. You're able to give yourself up to 30 credits in this version, but that can still not be enough. After finishing the game with 6 out of 12 characters, I lost over an hour to boss AI bullshit as Reptile and decided, fuck it, I'm using the cheat menu for unlimited credits. That's why half of my playthroughs have this cartoon face when I get a toasty. It signifies the cheat menu has been unlocked. This leads to another extra. Activate Ooh Nasty in the cheat menu, then choose Raiden and win on the armory. Press back block for the Thurgality, where you turn the opponent into the late Thurgus McGovern, who worked on the Probe's Mega Drive parts. I'll be honest, this and the Blue Portal are the only reasons I even did the Mega Drive part. I like this though. If the guys working on the arcade originals are allowed to put themselves in the game, it's fair for the people working on the parts to do the same. But now it's time to finish.
You fall. 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 Gotcha. You fall. You fall. You fall. 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 You will die.
No ending pictures here, just a text scroll. The Mega Drive part works fine, but I do find it the weaker of the 16-bit console parts. But like SNES MK1, the dip in quality isn't enough for me to rank it separately. Now we move into 8-bit territory, starting with the Game Boy part. Game Boy MK1 is ranked third from the bottom of all games played for this show, so we'll see if this version is just as bad, or if they improved it. Well, first thing to point out is that we've lost a third of the cast. Kung Lao, Johnny Cage, Baraka and Raiden are all gone. There's no Kintaro either. Noob is gone as well, but Jade and Smoke are still in the game. Since there's no portal, just pressing down start on any toasty is good enough. Only 3 stages could be fit in. We have the Pit 2, the Combat Tomb, and a bare brick wall passing itself off as Goro's lair. In terms of gameplay, it's a big step up from the first game's part. It's a lot faster, but it's still not very good. It's still a bit clunky. It's one of those where trying to mix up your playstyle results in death, so spamming is the only way to go. Surprisingly enough, full character movesets managed to make it over, and unlike Game Boy MK1, they'll actually work. Each character only has a single fatality. One did have to be changed though because of memory limitations. Don't have the space to have all the sprites for people being cut in half, so when Liu turns into a dragon, he breathes fire on them and their skeleton behaves just like Scorpion's Toasty. Lack of space is also why Kitana's fan decapitation also skins the head on contact, so they can use the same head sprite for everyone. And it's also why Sub-Zero's Deep Freeze Uppercut now destroys the entire body. You only have 6 credits with no way to increase the amount. I got 1 game over as Scorpion, but that was it. With only 9 fights instead of 14 to do, it's not as painful as it could be. Music's fine for the Game Boy, but there's only about 3 music tracks here. Shao Kahn is easier and harder than the arcade in different ways. He can be more aggressive and utterly destroy you, but it seems every character has some sort of way to exploit his AI and either spam him or have him too afraid to approach you, but you've got to figure it out. No endings at all in this version, there's just Shao Kahn is killed dead and the credits. This is better than the first game's port, but it's still not good. Between the 8-bit ports of 16-bit fighting games I've covered, Street Fighter 2 on Game Boy still wins out. But now we have one last version to look at, the Master System part. I hope you appreciate this because I spent £70 on this copy just for a few minutes of this video. It's one of the most expensive games I've ever bought. It has the exact same roster as the Game Boy version and the same 2 secret characters, but this part also managed to keep Kintaro, or what looks like Kintaro's malnourished teenage nephew. Jade and Smoke are still in the game, and like on Mega Drive, Jade is white. She's also very easy to beat in this part. Smoke is allegedly in this game, but across all 8 playthroughs I never got a single Toasty to even activate his fight with. It's also got the same stage selection as the Game Boy part: Pit 2, Combat Tomb and Brick Wall. This version looks and sounds better than the Game Boy version along with having a slightly bigger soundtrack, but it plays worse. It's clunkier than the Game Boy version and slower. It's also the most spammable version. Forward jump kick followed by an uppercut or roundhouse then repeat is usually good enough to win. Like on Game Boy you have only 6 credits, but I never ran out once. And while the music sounds better, all the tracks are in the wrong place. The Character Select theme has the Story Attract theme, the Pit 2 has the Armory's theme, with the Combat Tomb getting the Pit 2's theme instead. But if we're talking spam, then I have to single out Master System Jax as possibly the most broken character in the franchise. He can gotcha grab faster than the opponent can get up for an incredibly easy infinite. This was the easiest playthrough of all 52 combined across all platforms. The only other character that comes close off the top of my head is N64 Motaro. If you've done an arcade ladder as him in N64 Trilogy, then surely you know of the all-powerful hold forward, mash, kick and win. Liu Kang still retains the fire-breathing fatality, but this time Jax's was changed too. He gets a multi-slam that makes the opponent explode. Honestly, that wouldn't be out of place in MK3. Shao Kahn is easier than on the Game Boy, perfectly timed jump kicks can leave him unable to do anything. This time we get endings as big blocks of text. So the Master System port beats out the Game Boy version in terms of presentation, but the Game Boy version is the better game altogether. Although neither are good, I'll still take them above Street Fighter 1, but I think the gap in quality is enough to rank them separately. Funny, last game Sega had the better 8-bit and 16-bit port, now this time Nintendo has the best of both. Given what I remember of the MK3 ports I've played, I doubt that one will be as simple. But that will be a long time from now, as I still don't own all the versions of the MK3 series I want to cover. Plus, after 52 MK2 playthroughs, I don't exactly feel like playing another right now.